Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of What's the Deal with Sports. So before we kick off this episode, I'd like to say, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. So with the Giro having just finished and the cycling season now in full swing, we thought it'd be good to explore the details and the financial makeup of the biggest race on the planet, the Tour de France. So Tom, what's the deal with the Tour de France?
So I'm going to give you a little bit of history on the Tour de France before we get into the nitty-gritty. The first Tour de France was staged in 1903. The plan was for a 5-stage race from 31st of May to July the 5th, starting in Paris, stopping in Lyon, Marseille, Bordeaux and Nantes before returning to Paris. Toulouse was added later to break the long haul across southern France. The inaugural Tour de France winner, part-time chimney sweep Maurice Garin, took home 3,000 francs, equivalent to £10,250 today. His winning margin was almost 3 hours, which is still the biggest margin in Tour de France history. Right, Dave, chat to us a little bit about the prize money involved.
Total prize money, €2.3 million will be awarded to the teams and riders, including €500,000 to the final winner of the overall individual classification. Second place gets 200k, third place gets 100k. However, the winner receives 500k, but it's a team sport.
It is, yeah. I mean, first thing, the 500k for the winner surprised me a little bit when we were researching. Obviously, It's approximately, and I think this year it'll be slightly different. But it did surprise me when we look at other sports, Wimbledon, Masters, and you see some of the astronomical numbers. Firstly, but yes, it is a team sport, but also an individual one as well. And when you're trying to explain that to friends and family that don't understand cycling, you kind of sound like a bit of a fool trying to explain it, but if you know, you know. If you know, you know. Yeah, it is one of those kind of things. Yeah. And yes, what will generally happen is if you're a rider and you win the Tour de France and another teammate wins a stage race, you generally pull that money together and they'll distribute it amongst the team and the staff as well.
Yeah, I quite like that. It's nice. Team effort.
Yeah, very good. And there are some unwritten rules in the Tour de France. It's a sport that's like full of quirks and like unwritten rules and like honor, isn't it? It really is. And there's some interesting ones. So the yellow jersey, the leader of the race, this is one which, again, it has been broken, this unwritten rule in the past. These things do happen from time to time, but you don't attack the yellow jersey. If he's had a mechanical, i.e. he's got a problem with his bike, or if he stops for a slash, for example, the unwritten rule is you don't go on the offensive. Drafting is okay. And what I mean by drafting is, again, if you get a puncture, for example, and you've got to catch up with the group, there'll be support cars there. And it's technically not allowed that you sit in behind the tour cars and support cars and ride along and get the benefit of the draft. But they kind of turn a blind eye to it, really. It's kind of just part of the sport. Same with the bottles, when they hand the bottles out the window. Sticky bottles, yeah. So they'll hand the bottle out the window and just get that little slingshot. And again, it shouldn't happen, but I think a lot of people turn a blind eye to it. The Peloton will decide when to race. So if the Peloton decides, this is the main group, that it's a bit dangerous, they won't go full gas. And the Peloton has obviously a lot of power, and they'll decide what they do when they do it, which is great. And mutual back scratching goes on an awful lot. So it could be two riders from a different team, and one of the riders might want the mountain classification points. The other one might want to get into a breakaway. So there's a lot of kind of working amongst different teams for kind of their kind of own personal goals.
Yeah.
So 2024 has been quite a controversial route, Dave. So can you explain a little bit about this year's tour?
It is punchy, this
brutal
route. And I mean, anybody that knows that Mark Cavendish is tied with Eddie Merckx for the sprint stage was like, I'm back this year, going to win a sprint stage, I'm going to take the record. I mean, I bloody hope he does, but Christ, this is not the Tour de France to be thrown into. So 2024 is one for the climbers. There is 4 summit finishes, spans 4 mountain ranges, and is the lumpiest opening stage in Tour de France history. There's plenty for the sprinters, so Cav still has a chance, but they'll have to get over the mountain stages first. So there are 8 flat stages, 4 hilly stages, 7 mountain stages, with 4 summit finishes at don't even know how to pronounce these. Saint-Lary-Soulan, Plat de, and Plat de, So,
Yeah. Okay. And two time trials and 2 rest days.
yeah, I really apologise for anybody that's French and listening to this. I would only be butchering it, so I'm not even going to bother trying. But there's 176 riders who will line up at the start of the tour, divided into 22 teams and 8 riders each. But here we go. So 2,802 meters is the height of the summit of the Bonnet Pass in the Alps, the highest tarmac road in France, which will be the roof of the 2024, so the highest they'll climb. However, this next stat is absolutely bonkers. So they will be climbing 52,230 meters of total vertical gain during 2024's Tour de France, which is the equivalent of climbing Everest 5.8 times. So Everest stands at 8,849 meters. You and I do quite a regular sort of 50k leisure routes that we do about 300 meters of climbing, and we're like coffee and cake.
Yeah, we've earned a coffee after that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, so it is lumpy.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, like you said, it'd be great if Mark Cavendish could overtake Eddie Merckx, but he's got his work cut out this year.
He's going to need to hide in the peloton and just protect himself for
days.
days.
So overall classification, Dave, i.e. the winner of the Tour de France, who are the movers and shakers that we need to be looking out for?
Yeah, so I mean, Pogacar, right? He's just come off the back of absolutely dominating the Giro. Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous, really. But he rides for UAE Team Emirates. You've then got Roglic, who's Bora Hansgrohe, who, for anybody that's been following the news, is now Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe. Red Bull have come in. Well, I think we might look at a pod on Red Bull and their break into mainstream sport.
Domination of world sport.
Absolutely. You've then got Remco Evenepoel, Soudal Quickstep, and Carlos Rodriguez. So for Ineos Grenadiers are probably your sort of top 4 that we're going to be pushing for this.
And obviously Vingegaard as well, who is what? The
22, 23 champion.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about team budgets now, Dave. And actually, when you look at the annualized budgets of some of these teams, yes, the number's big, but compared to other sports, it isn't. And obviously that's a byproduct of what they generate as a sport. But I was just reading this week about 2 NFL teams purchasing 2 $10 million jets. Yeah. So they're just the absolute keys to their own kingdom in terms of travel and logistics and just making sure that every little detail's right. But yeah, run us through some of the budgets involved with the big boy cycling teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing to mention here is there's a huge disbursement between the top and the bottom, right? And it's all about sponsorship. It's all about sponsors. You got more money you've got, the better riders you're going to get, right? Similar to football teams. So UAE obviously naturally have the biggest. They have an estimated budget of 55 million to 60 million euros, followed by, no surprise, Ineos Grenadiers, who have got 50 to 55, equally the same as Jumbo-Visma, 50 to 55. Then there's a big drop, so 50-55 at number 3, and then Lidl Trek are 30 to 35. So again, big drop there between the two. When you then look at sort of skip down to sort of the bottom, you've then got people like Cofidis, who have got estimated budget of 15 to 20 million, and then Intermarché, Wanty, Gobert, whatever the rest of that is, estimated budget of 12 to 18 million. So again, if you're looking at sort of those top 3 teams who have got 50, 60, 50, 55 million, there's then a big drop to the number 4 team in Lidl Trek, which is 30 to 35, almost half. And then you go down to sort of 17, 18, and it's sort of 12 to 18 million.
But this is the same as other sports. You've got the 3 or 4 with the resource, like football, for example. You've got the kind of the big few, haven't you? And then it kind of cascades down from there. One question I will ask you though, with Ineos Grenadiers' budget being one of the biggest in the peloton, do you think there's an element of pressure here now to win a Tour de France? Because last time they won it was 2019 with Egan Bernal. Previously, they'd been dominating it, starting back from 2012, Brad Wiggins, Chris Froome, multiple times, Geraint Thomas. But yeah, it'll be 6 years this year. So they need to be podiuming at very, very least, don't they?
Yeah, I reckon as well, because, they were Team Sky back then when they were dominating. And there's an element that still the same team, right? Dave Brailsford was there. Okay, he's gone. He's moved on to Man United, I think, hasn't he? But Mr. Marginal Gains. But they need to step up now, because those Sky days were the days. And now it seems to have teetered off. And Ineos have come in, huge budget, but they need to start.
They've lost some key players, like key men behind the scenes, haven't they? So it'll be interesting to see how they get on. Let's talk about rider salaries then, Dave. So who are the big boys in terms of who's taking home the bread?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no surprise. Pogacar, UAE, he's on around 6 million euros a year. So one thing to bear in mind with these do not include individual sponsorships, appearances. This is pure salary for bum on saddle, turning the legs, right? So Roglic, Bora Hansgrohe around 4.5 million, Vingegaard 4 million euros, Evenepoel 2.8 million, Pidcock 2.7, Adam Yates 2.7. Egan Bernal, which surprised me because he's had a lot of injuries recently and only just coming back, but he's on 2.5. And then Carlos Rodriguez for Grenadiers, 2.5 as well. So, I mean, there's some chunky salaries in the top 10, but that's not everyone. That's not all the world tour, is it?
No, there's a big disparity between kind of top and bottom here. I think for like a world tour rider, the minimum salary is somewhere around 45,000 euros if you're employed. And, you'd like to think that if you're racing the Tour de France, that that's the cream of the crop within their team. And from research, we're seeing that a reliable domestique who's like a worker for the team, really good worker, will stand to make somewhere between 100 and 400,000 euros a year, which is good. It's good money. But if you're on 100,000 euros a year as a pro cyclist, you're not retiring off that, are you?
No, and the thing there is, I mean, it is a demanding sport. You're not going to be doing it for that long. Your career is not going to be a huge career. So you need to be thinking about what else you're going to be doing afterwards, right?
Yeah, and they don't have a huge amount of time, do they? It's not like a football player or a rugby player will go in and they'll do their 2 or 3 hours of training a day. These boys are on the saddle for 8 hours a day, and even when they're training, they're in the winter they're doing 8-hour training days, long turbo sessions, and they must be absolutely fucked afterwards.
I mean, when I say to the wife, "Oh, me and Tom are going out for a bike ride at the weekends," I get how long are you going to be? We've got the kids and during the week.
It's not our job, is it?
It's not a job, no. But we go out for 2 or 3 hours, and that's a leisure ride. But you're right; these guys are going to be punching hundreds and hundreds of miles a day. It's training. Anyway, so let's get into the nitty gritty now of who actually owns the Tour de France. Let's get into the financial make.
You tell me, Dave. This is your bit.
Oh, go on then. I will. So legally, the Ormery family own the race, but most people know it's the ASO. So their company is the ASO, which is Ormery Sports Organisation. So the ASO also owns Spain's La Vuelta and the Paris-Roubaix, as well as the Paris Marathon as well. So some big events there. So as much as they own the Tour de France, you can think, okay, great, they own it, they make all the decisions, they can sell it, whatever they want, right? Yes and no. As much as they own it, but I think a little bit like we talked about Wimbledon, it's a staple, right? It's a national treasure for us as an organisation, as a sporting event. Very similar with the Tour de France. So the Tour benefits from benign support from the French state. So operating in the public realm, it conducts itself accordingly. The Tour benefits from support from the French state, right? So as much as it is a privately owned company, it is vastly supported by the French state. And there's been rumours that it's been tried to be purchased before, but obviously it wasn't for sale. And if it was to be sold, the government would have a say into who it goes to, because obviously it benefits the local economies and states so much.
It's like a sport of like national interest. It's an event of national interest, isn't it? Which the government would ultimately try and protect.
The ASO is notoriously secretive about the revenues that get made from each of their events, whether it's the Tour de France, the Vuelta, the Paris Marathon. But latest public financial records show that the company's revenue climbed to 550 million euros in 2022, a gain of 17% on the previous year. And also it was the highest, 41.2 million people watched the Tour de France globally. So what they did is, they've got basically 3 main revenue streams, which is TV, advertising and sponsorships. So do you want to give us a bit of an overview in terms of how they are broken down?
Yes, so TV rights, as you'd expect, the Tour de France will be widely available to watch in lots of places this July. The race is expected to be live streamed on Discovery Plus and Eurosport, as well as ITV4 in the UK and Europe. A Flowbike's annual subscription will cost you $209 if you want to watch it in Canada, while in the USA, NBC Sports via Peacock Premium, $4.99 a month, will show the race. Australians can watch the Tour de France for free on SBS On Demand. It's estimated that TV rights make up 55% of the revenue stream, with the race being shown in a whopping 186 different countries. Advertising then makes up 40% and is critical for the race when it comes to jersey sponsorships, the publicity caravan, and route sponsors. In contrast to the days of yesteryear, town hosting fees now only make up an estimated 5% of revenue. All in all, sources estimate the revenue generated specifically from the Tour de France itself is between €55.5 million and €138 million per year. Based on historical data, it is thought that the ASO worked to a profit margin of around 21%. This produces a profit for the Tour de France itself of between €11 million and €27.5 million.
Not too shabby.
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Again, it's nothing in comparison to some of the other sports we've been talking about, isn't it? Which is why cycling has been through its challenges, commercial challenges over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we were doing a podcast recently on Wimbledon, right, and talking about that. And, they turned over approximately £350 million in 2022.
But you got to think of it. There's
one event.
Yeah, but there's one big difference between the Masters, Wimbledon, Euros, and the Tour de France. They can sell tickets. Tour de France can't sell tickets. It's people going on the side of the road. You could walk, if you live in a village that the Tour de France is going past, you walk out your front door and watch the race go past. So they're at a major disadvantage, aren't they?
Yeah, they're hugely reliant, as we said before, TV rights and sponsorship is about it. And they have the odd sort of Finnish village, right, where they can sell coffees and stuff like that. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, yeah, and again, worlds apart, you then look at like the UEFA Champions League. They generated a total commercial revenue of 3.25 billion during the Champions League. So, as you can see, while it's not the biggest, Tour de France is certainly still big business and of course makes a good amount of money, but it's barely a drop in the ocean compared to some other sporting events. And again, you compare that to football, American sports, it's nowhere near, but it's got such a pedigree, right? It's so supported. People are so passionate about it.
It's one of the biggest sporting events of the calendar for me. Yeah. I absolutely love it. And I'd like to say there'd be something romantic or unexpected happen this year, but over the years, it's become a little bit more predictable. It's still exciting, but I can't see past Roglic, Pogačar or Vingegaard, really. Can you?
No, not at all. I think you just think of his performance on the Giro. I think this is going to be a whitewash, unless something dramatic happens. He gets caught up in a crash. Anything can happen. So yeah, 29th of June, Tour kicks off. I can't wait. So that's another episode of What's the Deal with Sports. Like and subscribe. See you on the flip side.